Hey everyone, welcome to another video, and this time I'll be talking about the concept of laziness and why I disagree with that concept and even find it extremely problematic. For us to reconsider the concept of laziness, we have to think about the social and political dimension of the matter, consider the system we live under, but also acknowledging that each individual person has different capabilities and limits. Which, by the way, as you've probably guessed, I'm mostly referring to disability and mental health issues. And if we want to achieve disability justice and for mental health to be destigmatized, we have to change our mindset regarding this idea of laziness. You can imagine why people are called lazy. They say people are lazy because they are unproductive, they have few energy and motivation, they spend their day doing nothing, or because they aren't doing something that's supposedly easy and takes no effort. Yeah, supposedly, that's important because you don't know how easy it actually is for that person. They might be genuinely struggling with these things. People are called lazy by their parents, by teachers, and pretty much by everyone around them. It is a derogatory term. It puts the blame on the person and can be used to harshly judge and even shame others. Instead of trying to understand what a person is going through and what are the reasons that leads to them being unmotivated, unproductive, or not having enough energy, the idea of laziness is a myth that's perpetuated by capitalism. Under capitalism, people are forced to work to afford the most basic necessities that we need to survive, and we spend a life where work hours can be truly excessive, overwhelming, and push us to our physical and mental limits. Due to work, we have so little free time in a week, and the human body needs to rest to be healthy and to function properly. Which, yeah, it's something that we aren't given the opportunity. Today's video is sponsored by these shoes. What's so special about them, you ask? They look like regular shoes. Actually, they look pretty awful. Who the hell would want to buy this garbage? Well, the thing about these shoes is that they can do this to your feet. Wow, that looks awesome. I don't know exactly how this works and what the shoes are really doing to that person's feet, but all I know is that I just wasted some of your time on a fake advertisement and made the video needlessly longer than it should. So the myth of laziness perpetuates the interests of the ruling class and feeds this false idea that people are rich because they work hard and people are poor because they're just lazy. Like, look at this tweet. Exactly. That's how the capitalist mindset and system operates. No regard for mental health and people's limits whatsoever. It makes people feel guilty for resting and wanting to have time for themselves, and this helps people become more compliant and obedient workers who have no issues sacrificing themselves, sacrificing their soul to make their bosses richer. The concept of laziness is used to justify paying workers poverty wages and to try to convince them that it's okay. You've got people like this one and this one who have all the fucking money in the world. Meanwhile, their workers are treated and paid like garbage and barely make enough to survive. And this is what they teach kids, by the way. When a kid sees a homeless person for the first time, they ask their parents why they are in that position, and some of them will say, "Nah, they're just lazy. They don't want to work." And speaking of kids, capitalism doesn't start at the labor system. School is a place where kids and teenagers are exposed to the capitalist system and are forced into these activities against their will. Going to school is similar to working a full-time job. And we're talking about kids that can be as young as 4, 5, or 6 years old. People are forced to sit in a chair and to have information being regurgitated at them for several hours. And on top of that, they still have homework and assignments invading their free time. I despise school for many reasons, but I have a hatred of homework in particular. Because it's the time where kids should be resting because they're finally free from school. But nah, they are forced to do meaningless tasks that don't contribute anything to their learning. And of course, the teachers and the parents will say that the kids are lazy because they don't want to do the homework. Have you considered that they might be overloaded with assignments and that it's pushing their limits? Like, Jesus Christ, let kids rest. The concept of laziness is also extremely ableist because if someone is called lazy, chances are that they are neurodivergent, disabled in some way, struggling with their mental health. They could be autistic, have ADHD, chronic illnesses, learning disabilities. It could be burnout, depression, anxiety, and sometimes multiple of these things happening at once. And guess what? Sometimes these people don't know that their brain works in a different way or that they have certain conditions. They might be undiagnosed or undiscovered, and you can imagine the problems that might result from that, starting from childhood. That or they might refuse to disclose their mental health issues due to stigma and fear of not being taken seriously. And when people define someone's worth based on their productivity and have the habits of dismissing others as lazy, there's no surprise that people are hesitant to communicate these things like disclosing their struggles and mental illness. If someone says that they have depression, others will say, "Nah, you're just lazy. You just want excuses and you're making a big deal out of things. Now stop complaining and go do your tasks." Depression has a huge impact on the capacity to work, to do everyday tasks like cooking and cleaning, even maintaining personal hygiene. And how is it helpful in any way to call these people lazy? You are telling them that their suffering and mental illness is their fault, and you are putting even more pressure in their most vulnerable moments. A concept that I would like to bring up is executive dysfunction, which are neurological reasons that make it so people struggle with doing tasks and with being productive. The term is commonly used when talking about autism and ADHD, for example. As an autistic person myself, there are many reasons why I have executive dysfunction, such as struggling to switch between tasks, to have focus and motivation for things that aren't my special interests, and being reliant on routines, which it'll make harder to do things if they aren't in my routine. There are things that we can't control. It's not as simple as, oh, just try harder, because that's useless and dismissive advice, if you can even call it that, because people might be doing their best already. If someone with executive dysfunction tries to push their limits, which is what school and work forces us to do, I'm promising that the result will be even worse. It can result in burnout and exhaustion and more mental health complications, which makes it even harder to function and to recover. So we should listen to our body, find accommodations, and take some time to rest. Another concept is the spoon theory. So it's basically a metaphor that says that each person has a different amount of energy in a day, and the energy is represented by the unit spoon. Each activity requires a different number of spoons. Like you might hear people saying, oh, so you can do this task but not the other one? You're just lazy. If you can do one, then you should be able to do the other. Should have no excuses. When one of the tasks requires more energy, requires more spoons, this metaphor was made by Christine Miserandino to represent chronic illnesses, and you can read her blog post, which is in the description. But I've also seen this concept being applied to autism, ADHD, and mental illnesses. And it can be a way for you to try to understand. So, from what I've said here, laziness is a word used to dismiss and invalidate people's struggles, sometimes to gaslight them. If someone is supposedly lazy, there are always invisible barriers and underlying issues that explain the situation better than just, they're just lazy. People who don't have energy and are struggling with doing things need support, understanding, and accommodations. Instead of calling someone lazy, be patient. Try to put yourself in their shoes. Try to understand their side instead of judging, making them feel guilty, and jumping to conclusions. That will only make the situation worse. If you are anti-capitalist, an ally to disabled people, and want to see the issue of mental health being taken seriously rather than a taboo or a personal moral failure, a good first step is to deconstruct and unlearn the idea of laziness altogether, and to stop calling that word to others. Well, even to yourself. I know that it's not easy after years of internalizing capitalism and being constantly invalidated but I'm letting you know that your struggles are valid. You are possibly being overwhelmed and working yourself to exhaustion, and what you need is a good rest. You deserve to be kinder to yourself as well. Before ending the video, I'd like to announce that I've just reached 50% of my goal on coffee to afford a new laptop. A huge thanks to everyone who donated, and if you aren't in a position to donate, please consider doing so, even if it's a tiny amount, to make me closer to my goal. The link is in the description. But if you can't, there are free and easy ways to support me. By liking, subscribing, sharing, and commenting, you are making a bigger difference than you think. It's very appreciated. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day.